And episode 13. It's a lucky number. This is the Secret Squirrels. We're in association with Dr. Jerome Corsi and Corsi Nation website. We are the Smart Conservatives Current Events Roundtable. Right. We are the guys that's behind the scenes. We got a couple people here that are in voice, but they're not coming up to see us. We're going to hope that they do that. But so anyway, today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about time travel, hopefully. First thing we're going to do is turn to the what do you call it? Spider. Go through some of those stories, and then we'll get into the weirdness of time travel. Hope you guys stuff too. But okay, so who else is in here with us? Somebody introduce themselves.
I go by Dr. DC Camp, and I'm from the year 2051, and I have returned to this time period because all these years I've had Hillary Clinton's email server in my closet, and I thought it was time to bring it back and to give it to the authorities in charge.
Duty.
I'm Jaxer Wild. I'm just the quiet troublemaker in the background. Don't mind me.
We're all troublemakers.
I'm the Georgia Peach that's the quiet one.
That's true. Yeah, Jax, what are you doing claiming the quiet role with JR in there?
Well, but.
You are so oppressed. I know. I understand. Oh. Okay. So, turn over here quickly to Spider, and we'll look a little bit at the headlines. I don't really care too much about it, but we'll take a peek. You know, I mean, we got the hurricane down there near the Carolinas. We covered this kind of stuff in Dr. Corsi's show. We had a couple of guest hosts on Dr. Corsi. So at the very last bit of that, we covered the hurricane story. Expecting, I think John Adams was saying that it's not a very big hurricane, but it's got some dense energy or something, a lot of water. Anything about it?
Well, it's probably a good time to buy a rubber raft.
Go fishing.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of fishing during a hurricane.
Probably not. I don't know. I've been in a typhoon, but never a hurricane, so
What's the difference between a typhoon and a hurricane?
That's a good question. I've asked that myself. To me, they're the same. You got a lot of wind, a lot of rain, and a lot of damage.
Well, if there's anybody in the chat room who knows the answer to that, please tell us. What's the difference between a typhoon and a hurricane? Probably not good chances of it because we only have 14 people watching, right? Which means there's not enough people sharing. See, you guys should be sharing our wonderful.
I'm doing that. I'm trying to do 3 things at once here. There we go. See, shared now.
Shared.
I did it. I did send a text to John Adams because I figured he might know better than we would. And so hopefully he'll join us shortly.
Yeah, he did say that, right now it's category 4, but by the time it hits, then it's going to drop energy to the category 3. And I'm assuming that the whole point to conservation of energy is that energy gets transferred to rainfall. So you're going to get dumped on down there, Carolinas. Hope you've prepared yourselves for this.
Well, I hope everybody stays safe and that you've got a lot of stuff like food and stuff so that you guys aren't... Well, water's going to be kind of
clean water.
Yeah, that's
drinkable water.
Yeah, that's true. I'd hate to see the shelves of the local Costco's right now, but yeah, I really hope you guys stay safe.
Looks like they got flooded down there already, according to this article.
Really? Let's see. Yeah, well, see, my rubber raft would do great on that.
Yeah.
So, and that's in Breitbart?
Yeah, I mean, you could find this pretty easily. I mean, I don't know. I'm not particularly concerned about it. Maybe I should be, but I don't know. Maybe I got desensitized from last year's.
From Irma? Rita, one of them.
I don't know.
That one that was really bad, yeah. Yeah, that does happen. So what else is next? What else do we have?
Let's move on. We got Julie Chen, wife of departed CBS CEO, takes time off from The Talk. Departed. Nearly departed? Well, what do you mean departed? Probably got fired.
He probably got fired.
Yeah. Walks away with $120 million. Severance pay, I suppose.
Oh, gosh. That would be horrible. I just don't know how you'd survive off of that kind of money.
Sexual assault and harassment.
Yeah.
So it's almost like there's a theme in our news.
Yeah, and that's a theme I hate to say, but I'm getting tired of seeing. But it seems that it's widespread. I would just kind of, I don't know. It's disturbing. So.
Not very
and
happy
I don't
news.
know.
I would prefer to have some happy news. Why don't people ever talk about happy?
Well, there's some goats in a tree. We could talk about that. Is that happier?
It would be happier, but it's probably not going to affect a lot of. So happy news. We needed to be very impactful. Some great good news coming our. Well, I suppose we did cover that. The president's possibly going to be declassifying a bunch of documents.
That would be nice.
Implicating the Obama White House, including Bill Dog.
Well, and Q has been busy today, not to really talk on it, but as a heads up, he's been busy about FISA being declassified. Yeah. So if that's going to happen, if that comes to pass, that would be great.
But isn't that like in the general news? So I kind of doubt this Q person. I don't know why, but I've always just taken it with a grain of salt.
Well, you and me both. I don't know what to think about it, but there you go. It's out there. You can look at it. Q's been busy. I don't know what to think.
At the very least, you should look at Q and find. I mean,
I'll look at it just to see what he's saying, but I don't fully trust it.
I think that's healthy, though. I mean, not trusting any source. I think a bit of skepticism is always a good thing. But I would trust Q over CNN. Say it that way, for sure.
Yeah, and that's, I have to agree with that. That's a sad comment, but yes.
Well, actually, I mean, it's really doesn't really say much because I find the Inquirer more trustworthy than CNN's.
Yeah, but the Inquirer has been more trustworthy than CNN. That's the sad thing. You'd think the supermarket tabloids would at least have more aliens in it or something.
Here's a good story. What if Donald Trump wrote his own book stuff? Because he's criticizing Bob Woodward's book, but what if he wrote his own book about? I'm sure there's going to be lots of stories coming out, but
you know what I found funny during the campaign? That I read The Art of the Deal, and if those news media people had read that, they would have known what he was doing the whole time.
Well, not only that, but all they had to do is read his other book, The America We Deserve, and they would have that memo that came out last week is so debunked by that book and the Art of the Deal. I don't get these people. Do they really think we're that stupid? Evidently.
Yeah, they're pretty confident. But
yeah, well, I guess, but But I agree. I think it would be neat to see the president come out with his own book and detailing what he's doing.
We got the Serena Williams
Oh gosh,
story. Kind of funny by itself. We don't even have to spin it or anything.
She's her own PR nightmare. She really is.
I don't know who that is.
She's a tennis player. And here's the sad thing is Naomi Osaka, the girl that beat her, said that she felt like she had to apologize after beating Serena Williams. What the heck for? For being a better tennis player?
And how is this a sexism issue? I don't get it, because
I don't
two
either.
girls playing tennis and one person loses, the other person wins. How is this sexist? How do you even possibly make this
unless
sexist?
Unless Serena Williams is not really a female, then maybe. But I'm just throwing that out there. Just take with it what you will.
Be like Mike.
There you go. But evidently Williams was fined $17,000 for violations. And to me, that's not enough. That's just really.
Well, she's probably pretty loaded, you'd think.
That's why I said that's not enough. I could see $170,000 and then give the money to charity. Fine, if she wants to do that, then it's going to at least help some people.
And so this next story is Trump administration takes aim at International Criminal Court.
Okay.
Hear what this is about. Oh, Bolton.
Yeah, let's see.
America's long-running reluctant relationship with the International Criminal Court came to a crashing halt on Monday as decades of U.S. suspicions about the tribunal and its global jurisdiction spilled into open hostility amid threats of sanction if it investigates U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Wouldn't want them finding any poppy fields. National Security Advisor John Bolton denounced the legitimacy of Hague-based court, which was created in 2002 to prosecute war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide in areas where perpetrators might not otherwise face justice. It has 123 state parties that recognize its jurisdiction. So this is on the eve of the anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Yeah, so what are they going to do to celebrate the 17th year anniversary?
Brain, you had some good thoughts on that. You ought to share those with us.
If I had any good thoughts, they're in the past.
Well, you know, that whole thing of the court is just that whole attempt was to try to set up a court that was outside the borders of any country. So, you know, this nice little statement that you said at the end, you know, to give courts for those that in areas where they normally wouldn't have courts. So the whole idea was to supersede borders. That was the whole intent in the creation of that whole thing in The Hague.
It's kind of scary.
And The Hague is actually Dutch. Den Haag, it means The Hague. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
What does that mean, The Hague?
The Hague. Den Haag is the name of it in Dutch.
I still don't know what it means.
The Hague.
The Hague.
The Hague, like a witch, a hag.
A hag, H-A-G.
Yep. Den Haag, that's the name in Dutch, and that's what it means. That's the translation of it.
Ron DeSantis resigns from Congress as he runs for Florida governor. That sound interesting? I don't know if that sounds.
I don't know. Not really. Sorry.
Yeah. Trump administration ordered the closure of the Palestinian diplomatic mission in Washington if it pursues investigations We can see what Al Jazeera has to say about this. We'll give them. The United States says it will shut down the Palestinian Liberation Organization's diplomatic office in Washington, D.C. over the Palestinian Authority's refusal to enter into U.S. brokered negotiations with Israel, the latest in a series of measures against the Palestinian leadership. The move on Monday comes amid deteriorating ties between two sides in the wake of the U.S. President Donald Trump's controversial recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital last year and the relocation of its embassy there. That decision drew universal condemnation from Arab leaders and criticism around the world, while Palestinian leaders, who see East Jerusalem as the capital of their future state, said the U.S. had taken itself off the table as a peace mediator. So, why, I personally am so tired of the Middle East having so much importance on the world stage in terms of political conflict. I realize that it's kind of the centerpiece of the Western religion, but it's just a little spot in the desert. Why do they care so much?
Yeah. Well, I agree. And that's a good question. Why do they care so much?
There's plenty of desert down in Africa, right? Isn't there like lots of desert stuff?
Yes. Namibia. I think that's almost all desert down there.
I suppose we could talk about ley lines. Leave that to. You going to tell us about ley lines, okay. The importance of Jerusalem's.
I don't know so much as ley lines as it is the fact that there are some spiritual beliefs and spiritual belief systems that there are certain sections. I wouldn't call them ley lines, as I would so much spiritual hotspots. And where there's a spiritual hotspot, usually there is an accumulation of negative or dark energy underneath those hotspots that vibrate at a higher frequency. Now we're really getting into some metaphysical stuff, though. Let me know where you want to go with this.
Go there. I say
yeah,
go.
Let's go there.
All right. There are some spiritual belief systems that believe that there are multiple dimensions, okay? And some of this actually fits with what actually happens in some science where there's multiple planes of dimensions, multiple planes of consciousness at various different levels. Well, some of these vibrate at higher frequencies than others do. And by higher frequencies, I'm talking about whole different higher vibrations. So, for example, there are some people that believe that they can tune into higher vibrations by fasting and prayer and meditation and climbing mountains in the Himalayas. It's the old story of climbing up to see the guru and try to find enlightenment. So if you take those beliefs, that there are beliefs that you can tune into these higher frequencies and vibrations, that at these higher frequencies and vibrations actually exist cities of light and cities of higher frequency and vibration. So some people have claimed that they can actually see them. Some people have had near-death experiences, have actually been a part of it, and they've witnessed to them, and they've been called retreats, where people can actually, when you sleep at night, you can actually leave your body, and you can go to these retreats and be escorted up there. As just there are negative frequencies and vibrations in places you don't want to hang out in the middle of the night,
right?
Which are called astral, from a nightmare or a daydream or lucid dream, maybe.
Well, those are three separate different things. So if you want to talk about a nightmare, a lot of times people are on a frequency or vibration where they've got themselves stuck in what's called the astral plane, which are lower frequency vibration places, as opposed to something that might be, like, say, a spiritual experience where they, people have experienced this, including.
Well, sure, but dreams are experiences. How do you know that the experience is in any? How do you know there's a stuff or a substance, or whatever it is, that's leaving the body? How do you know it's just not a dream?
Or like astro projection. That's what I think of when you're talking about that.
No, I'm talking about
somewhere while you're laying in your bed, but you're somewhere else.
Yeah, that can also be called bilocation. These are all different consciousness. These are all different planes of consciousness. We're talking about multiple things here. I mean, we can start breaking them down, but I had a sister who was a psychic. Oh my God. Talk about an exciting, adventurous, youth that was. But I learned a lot about various different planes of consciousness as a result of this. And so if you study, like, say, for example, people like Betty Eadie or Dania Brinkley, who have had near-death experiences, who have actually left their bodies and have explained what it was that they saw, the tunnel of light. And they've talked to high spiritual beings, and they've seen various different things and different frequencies, and then have come back to tell their stories.
Yeah, but still, it's the same question to me. Is like, how do you know this isn't a...
No, you have to go through the experience he did.
Yeah, that's true, because I think that's only something you can experience to know whether or not it's a dream, because it is something really radical.
I've had different kinds of dreams, or things that I would call dreams, but I don't really see why they would have to be anything more than a dream.
All right, well, look. Here you got Danny Brinkley, perfect example, sitting in his room in his house, talking on a telephone during a thunderstorm. The next thing he knows, lightning had hit the pole outside, went through the phone, and literally shot him off his feet. And what had happened was he ended up leaving and being ejected from his body. He saw his body laying there. Everybody heard the bang. Guy that was on the phone came over as well. And he's watching everybody run around the room, dealing with his body while he's up in the air in a whole different place, wondering what's going on, because he sees himself laying there, his body, yet he's out of it. And so he goes through the explanation of where he was. This wasn't a dream. This guy was dead. So he followed his body all the way to the hospital through the ambulance, and was actually in the hospital, and he was watching the doctors and everything, working on him. And so he was able to confirm all this when he got back into the physical again. I knew what you were saying. I saw what you were doing. This was what was going on. That wasn't a dream. He was there. He was just ejected from his body, and he was wandering around. So to answer your question, this just isn't a thought thing. These are experiences that people have really had.
Well, I experienced dreams, though. To call it an experience, dreams are an experience.
Well, that happened to my uncle, though, when he was getting his tonsils out. He could tell what the doctors were doing. He told his mother.
Yeah, that happens a lot of times with people that go under an anesthesia. I had a near-death experience. Well, it wasn't a near-death experience. I had a vision that I was flying a plane in World War II. I explained that. Okay, I was there, and so I could feel it. So it's hard for me to explain it to you, because that wasn't part of your experience set. But I was there. I was sitting in that cockpit. I could feel the vibration. Excuse me.
Well, the Bermuda Triangle did all kinds of weird things like that too. I mean, people could go back in time and see things that weren't of their time.
I don't know about the Bermuda Triangle in that sense, but I can tell you something about multiple planes of consciousness. And it's said that we exist on multiple planes of consciousness simultaneously, which gets us to
have any physical dimension, is what I'm saying. Is like, why can't you just explain these things in the terms of consciousness itself? That these are things that happen within consciousness.
I don't think I understand your question. These are different planes of consciousness.
If you could take it to an extreme and say, excuse me, guys, we got problems with our throats today.
God, amen to that one.
Y'all been talking too much. That's what it is.
No, I think it's the forces of evil trying to shut us up. That's what I. Well, just go extreme about it. I don't necessarily believe in a physical reality anyway. But I don't know that there's anything that's non-consciousness.
No, I see what you're talking about.
Physics is interesting. How in some point, like if you get in a near accident, one part of yourself really died, but the other part goes on?
Quantum physics has a lot to do with this, because if you look at quantum physics, there are various different states that a supposed electron cloud can live on. So depending on the frequency and the vibration, they will take on different states depending on frequency and vibration. If you look at Hermetic principles, apparently there is all things are thought. So I agree with you, Brain, that everything is a different state of consciousness. So that matter really is unreal. And if you take a look at what Jesus did in the Bible, even, being able to walk upon water, being able to, transcend, transmute or transform water into wine, various different other actions that he was doing are all application of spiritual law. He knew how to do them, and he had the right consciousness to be able to do it.
Yeah, like older Christianity used to be, the theology used to be rooted in Neoplatonism, and that was an idealist tradition. So, the whole idea of a material reality, kind of a new thing, relatively speaking.
No, this is interesting. You're bringing this up. Have you guys talked about time travel yet?
We're getting there.
Well, we're getting there.
We're working that way.
Well, you're going to get it right now, because this guy who was accused of being a time traveler or claimed that he was, John Teeter.
Right.
And he talked about the fact that he was existing in multiple different dimensions. So he had a timeline that he was on. But he also found out that when they started doing time travel, that when he returned to where it was, because of his presence, the timeline in which he appeared would change. So he was on multiple different timelines. Did any of you guys ever see the old TV show called Sliders?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It was somewhat like that, the way he explained it. He said when he would go, he couldn't go back to the same timeline that he left, but it would be very similar. However, each one would differ in like some kind of a percentage, like a 2% change. So like some things that were done in one timeline couldn't be done in another, but there would be multiple John Teeters, in that they could appear in various different places or locations, but they wouldn't go back to the same timeline that they had. So, but there were multiple dimensions of John Teeter on various different timelines, much like the TV show Sliders, where people were sliding from one Earth to another, all in Los Angeles under different considerations. It was an interesting premise. It's a shame that the show didn't quite follow it all the way through, and it kind of got swarmy towards the end. But
is it on Netflix? Because I've never seen it.
I think it was. It was either on Netflix or Amazon Prime, but yeah.
Yeah, it was called Sliders, and it was good for a couple seasons, and then it kind of lost its thing. But the whole premise about that was that they were traveling on different dimensions of Earth, and it explores multi-dimensional consciousness. So that when they went through this slide, they ended up on a different Earth in the same place, but under different circumstances, different times. So like they would slide to one, and it might be back during the time of the dinosaurs, and they slid to another one, and it might be where the United States was didn't win World War II, or there was another one where they slid, and other things were happening at various different times. So the whole thing about this John Teeter was, he said that he had come back, traveled back in time from 2036, I believe the time frame was that he had given.
That's what I understood too.
Yeah, and that he went ahead and started posting on the internet so that other John Teeters, when they would show up in this timeline, would understand and could make the connection about what it was that he was doing. He was leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. So the same John Teeter would be doing, and this is interesting because this also fits with something called quantum jumping, where it's the idea that we exist on multiple planes of consciousness simultaneously.
Okay, with that one, I have to have you stop, because Zero Hedge last week had an interesting article that the alleged Squirrel assassins were caught breaking the laws of physics, and let's see, I'm trying to get this. looks like Scotland Yard released some pictures, and it's interesting because when you look at these pictures, the timestamp is identical, but you see each assassin in this long corridor in the exact same place.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Pretty cool.
Right. So, with that in mind, I mean, whether somebody doctored the photos or not, even if they didn't, this is a mind-blowing concept. So, go ahead, take it from there.
So according to what I understand, John Teeter showed up in 2036, and that he had been trained by some military units after a major civil war had occurred in the United States. So he came back to start relaying these stories of what had happened to the United States. And I believe this article that you have posted here was where we may had avoided something at some point or another because of, apparently these postings, and something changed in the time frame. But what had happened is that there was a civil war, which ended up going into a global, nuclear war. And they needed a piece of computer equipment that was manufactured back in the 80s. I believe it was the 80s, late 70s, 80s.
1996.
Oh, it was 96.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the personal computer that was done by IBM that was about the size of a sewing machine box.
Right.
You remember that one? And apparently there was something in there that allowed that machine to communicate with various other computers. For example, mainframes and other things. I think it had to do with the protocols that were involved in the software that was installed with that operating system. So they were all told, this team, that they had to go back and find something. He had to procure this computer and get it back to their time frame. So it's very interesting. So apparently this John Teeter did come back and was successful in getting it sent somewhere, with another John Teeter or whatever coming back and explaining what it was that he was doing. And also at the same time, apparently this one John Teeter met himself at a younger age and met his family and met his parents. And in fact, he stayed with his parents apparently for some time period before he moved on to his jump. And he said this was all done with a time machine that fit in the back of a vehicle. And so he was referring to the fact that it was fairly large, so it would fit in a van or something of that size. And they could only go so far. The further out that they went, the more deviation there was.
Because it's only accurate to 60 years.
Yeah, it's something like that, exactly. So anyway, those postings are out there. You can read them, and it's very interesting. So when we're talking about the
possibility of predicting the future, maybe it's because we can actually go there. Or we also what was that other story about the Looking Glass Project Looking Glass or something like that?
Oh God,
you guys know about that?
You're talking about Montauk?
I think it's in that vein. I'm not for sure if it's the same thing or not.
I know of one story. I don't know if this is the Project Looking Glass, but it was the one that was related to, I don't know, back in the 1960s, 1970s, there was this old TV show called The Time Tunnel. Did you guys ever see it? It was an old...
I haven't.
This is a computer program. The Looking Glass computer program.
Time Tunnel. It was wild. It was an old TV show that happened to be going on the same time that the Montauk experiments were going on, where they were trying to establish a timeline wormhole with a beginning and an ending. And they used for the guidance and direction, apparently, a psychic with equipment that was able to actually read brainwaves. And now they're talking about the fact that the computers could do that. Well, apparently this technology has been around since the 70s, and they were experimenting in Montauk, Long Island, at a place called Camp Hero, which is out at the tip of Montauk, Long Island. And so they had this discussion about this psychic in this underground base. And I have actually been out there. I haven't been in the base. You can kind of sneak in, and you can see that
the TV show Stranger Things is supposed to be based on Montauk.
Montauk. Okay. Well, what's interesting about Montauk tied back to the Philadelphia experiment with the USS Eldridge. Who let the dogs out? Boom, 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 boom. Who
Okay,
let the dogs out? Okay. Anyway, the Eldridge. Remember we were talking about the USS Eldridge?
Yes.
Okay. Apparently, the experiments that were going on with the Eldridge, where they said it was trying to make radar invisibility, and then they actually disappeared. Well, we all believe that they knew what they were attempting to do, and they were trying to attempt time travel at the time, and the experiment failed. Guys came back. The ship disappeared for a while. Supposedly showed up in Norfolk Harbor, where it was berthed. That was its home port, and then disappeared again. Showed up back where it was, and some of the crew were embedded in the bulkheads. It had rematerialized, so they shut down the project. One of the things that they had shut down were some of the generators that were on the Eldridge. Apparently, they got a hold of some of the generator equipment on the Eldridge, used it in Montauk, 40-some years later, 30 years later, and were able to make the connection back to the original Philadelphia experiment and establish a timeline to where that wormhole was open by the use of a psychic and a computer that actually read the thoughts and generated the force field. So with some practice, they were actually able to move either end of that time frame and do some time travel. All of this stuff was in a book called Pyramids of Montauk and various others. There were three things that were done, and apparently there were some people who were involved in the Montauk Project experiments in the 70s, and that had been, when they shut it down, had been brainwashed. And apparently these guys came back and had, through some kind of, I think it was hypnotherapy or regression, were able to reclaim some of the memories and reconstruct what actually happened at Montauk. This is a wild story. I mean, it's way out there. But so apparently the government's been involved in this stuff for a long period of time, and things got out of hand. They realized that it was being abused and misused, the psychic and everything else, and they decided to try to create a scenario where they could get it shut down, and they did. But that technology and everything else, with the computer actually being able to read the brains and stuff, that's been, I think, perfected now. Didn't somebody say something about an article?
I had seen articles on that, that they had been working on that. Let me find it.
Pretty wild stuff. I mean, really wild. I mean, it's out there. So I actually took a trip out to Montauk to see if any of this stuff actually rang true. And it's an underground base. I can tell you that for a fact. And Camp Hero is long since closed. And apparently it also boiled down to the guys that were involved, and then they started using children. They started using young boys. And so I think this ties with their pedophilia and the use of other things. Apparently, homeless people were sent down these tunnels to try to figure out what was going on during the early days of the experimentation and never came back, and various other things that happened. So it's this stuff is out there. They've been playing with this stuff.
And something on it. I don't remember if it, because I used to watch In Search Of, with Leonard Nimoy and stuff like that when I was young. But I saw a program about how they were using those electromagnets, and I don't remember what it was on or whatever, because it was a long ago. And they would make that Navy ship appear and disappear, and then some of the crew members, even a few days after, would appear and disappear.
Right. And if you look at the movie called The Philadelphia Experiment, you'll see that there was actually scenes where there were helicopters and they showed up, and then all of a sudden two guys apparently tried to jump ship right when the experiment was happening. And when they did, they landed in Montauk during the Montauk experiments in the 70s. And that's actually talked about in the movie. It's pretty wild. So the movie, even though it's supposedly a science fiction thing, pretty much carries a lot of what has come out in these stories. So it's anyone's guess as to really what the truth was.
Science fact.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, exactly.
That's the whole thing here is, they said they've got brain scanners that allow scientists to read mind.
Yeah, so that stuff was actually technology back in the 70s, late 70s, and early 80s, when they were trying to perfect it. And they used apparently some kind of mainframe computers to be able to read the information and to be able to construct the databases, related to it. So all that was being worked out supposedly at the Montauk project.
Right.
And that's where that kind of tied together. So it's a pretty wild scenario. Start with a Philadelphia experiment, and they go to the Montauk books, and it's pretty wild.
It just seems a little disturbing to me that they would mess with time travel. That just seems like a really dangerous thing to do, I don't know. Am I alone on this? I mean, you could do things that you have absolutely no intention of doing.
No, and I think violation of space and time. I think that's
what about those time paradoxes? I mean, what are you going to do about that?
About the what?
The time paradoxes. Because if you go back in time, then you change it.
Now, this is what this guy Teeter said about this, Brain. He basically said, that when you go back and you change it, you're only changing that specific timeline. And then they went back and he talked about the grandfather paradox, the paradox, the grandfather paradox, where if you go back in time and you ended up killing your grandfather, something like that, you would never be alive. What he's basically saying is that you would change that time frame, but then when you came back, you would be in a different time frame. It's closer to I think, Back to the Future than anything else. So, like, if you look at the first Back to the Future movie, where Marty and Doc go back, and then his dad ends up beating up Biff when they come back, his dad isn't kowtowing to Biff. His whole consciousness has changed. It was more like that. And so I think these Back to the Future movies have more science in them than we realize. It seemed like really good entertainment.
Okay, well then I want a Dr. Fusion, man. A Mr. Fusion on the back of my car. I'm sick and tired of the gas prices.
Yeah. Just throw some stuff. Yeah, so what John was saying was, he said when you go, you would be changing that particular timeline, and yes, your grandfather would be killed. You would still be there, but then the John Teeter of that timeline would not be born.
Yeah, they had some explanation for it where it was like you look, seen those mirrors that you look at yourself in it, and there's like infinity, those mirrors that I don't know what they're called. But,
yeah, you can see that like in a you go to any kind of department store and stand up where they measure you for clothes, and the opposing mirrors, and you can see yourself all the way down one side and see yourself infinitely
and that's
down
supposed
the other
to be
side.
how the time travel works, according to the Teeter story, is that you step out of one reality and go into the next one, but then meanwhile somebody from another dimension is coming to yours, so no net loss or net gain is so. But still, you got all those timelines and stuff. If you're killing your grandfather, then something's going to be out of whack, right?
In that timeline, apparently that's what he was saying.
But I wonder,
that timeline would be changed.
With going back to all of those, going back and doing that over and over, and creating, I'm wondering if it's creating all kinds of timelines, and would there be the possibility in the future of a collapse of all of those timelines, and what would that do?
Oh, wow, man.
Sorry. That's just the way I think. I mean, think about it. What if that happens? Holy cow, what are we playing with here? Is this really worth it? Just a thought. I'm just saying. I don't think that this has been thoroughly thought through. And maybe this is something we shouldn't do.
So, related to the Teeter story, we have books from 1893 called Baron Trump's Adventures and Last President. Curiouser.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I heard about this. Tell us more, Brain. Come on, tell us more.
Well, I don't know much about it. I just know that there's some stories that are very old, and they have a lot of strange coinkydinks in them.
Well, and this story has a lot in them, and the time travel story. I mean, even the picture they've got of Baron Trump, there's a significant resemblance to the president's son.
This Last President book, it says, President Trump is wealthy and lives in Castle Trump. The narrator of the book and President's Guide is named Don. President travels to Russia, and while in the U.S., a lot of the action takes place on Fifth Avenue in New York City.
Yeah, there's a little too many
Is
coincidences
there
there.
any way to authenticate that this really came from the 30s?
No, 1896,
Yes.
it says.
1896.
18, okay.
Right. The book is by Ingersoll Lockwood.
And it's available on Google Books?
That is a good question. Let me see.
We got, looks like this is Baron Trump's Marvelous Adventure. I'm going to put this in the chat. So you can get it on Internet Archive. That's the first book. Baron Trump's Marvelous Adventures, or this Underground Journey.
Yeah, Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. It's actually available on Kindle for 99 cents.
Well, you can get it free on Internet Archive. There.
Oh, you can?
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
I mean, it's showing up here that it was published in 1996, but I think that's a typo.
It says 1892, copyright 1892 by Ingersoll Lockwood. Only authentic portrait of William Heinrich Sebastian von Trump.
Yeah, see, in Ingersoll Lockwood, his lifespan was 1841 to 1918, so it can't be 1996.
Well, what if it's not time travel? Maybe it's like prognostication or whatever.
Yeah,
maybe somebody can foresee. Somebody's like prophesying the future.
Right.
Like just sheer intuition.
Yeah, he evidently made a lot of Baron Trump children's novels, according to Wikipedia. So there's more than just one. But it's interesting. I mean, what do you think about that?
I haven't read it, so I don't know what to think.
I don't either. I haven't either. So.
And I kind of agree with Brain on this, and you, Jax, that it could be a prognostication. It could be a vision. It could be because I know there's been quite a few writers that have done that.
Right.
I mean, look at, I think the first one that was the most famous of those was Nostradamus. I mean, he wrote quatrains based on what he saw, little stories.
Right. Right. Exactly. And he's been pretty accurate,
Yeah.
So I don't know, that I find this interesting, but again, my problem with time travel is I just think there's so many things that could go wrong, and I think we should just step away, back away slowly. Let's not even go there. But that's me.
Wow.
Like I said, what happens? What happens if all of those different timelines collapse?
Why? What I don't understand is why would they collapse?
Why wouldn't they? There's got to be something that's keeping them fluid, and keeping them going. But I would think that every time that you go to a different time, you're creating a new timeline, and you've got the timeline you left. So you keep creating these new timelines. To me, that's like Swiss cheese. You've got all these holes in there. There's only so many holes you can put in Swiss cheese before you have a pile of something on your counter that can't be held up anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
That's just my thought of it. That's how I see it. I'm seeing it is this is probably not a good thing to do. And I could be wrong, but
maybe the time police will be after them pretty.
Well,
or they'll be knocking on my door.
I think there's a sci-fi TV show from Canada that talks about something like that. There's some great technological future, and they send back a couple different teams, and every time they send them back, the teams and
are you talking about Stargate?
No. This is a time travel movie. I can't remember. I don't know the name of it.
Was it Quantum Leap?
No.
On the
No. Continuum. I think it was Continuum.
On Ingerson's final novel, The 1900, The Last President, whenever he wrote that, it begins with a scene of New York City in chaos. And it's early November, and a hugely unpopular outside candidate has just won the election for presidency.
Does that not give you the shivers or what?
Yeah, I have that little book, actually. It's not very big. I haven't got to read it, but
really?
Yeah, I ordered it several months ago. It's got a little black cover. Not very big. Yeah, it gives you the shivers.
Yeah, it does give you the shivers.
Yep.
So that's just, I don't know. It's I think that's interesting.
I'll put that link here in the
thanks.
The chat.
Well, and like I said, this kind of just started last week, with the Zero Hedge article, and seeing the two Squirrel assassins, supposedly, or allegedly, in the same time, but not.
Kind of like Deja Vu, that movie.
Right. It's either that is time travel, or somebody is really bad at Photoshop and forgot to change the time. So, I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I tell us a little more about Teeter. Do you know anything else?
The only thing that I know about Teeter was that after he came and did his writing, apparently he took off, and a lot of that writing is still around someplace. And I think he had some kind of a time frame. He knew that he was going to be leaving, but that's about the best. Let me see if I can find a good link that we could give to.
Well, I find it interesting. Telegraph.co, the Telegraph newspaper, said that that questions followed when he put the original post on the bulletin boards, and it says that Teeter answered them, some of them copiously, some cryptically, and he did indeed post pictures of his machine mounted like Back to the Future in a car, but it was a 1967 Chevrolet rather than a DeLorean.
I had a picture of it a minute ago.
Yeah.
While you look for that right quick, let me finish reading you the little paragraph that went with the description of the last president's book. After the election for presidency, the police officers are in the street trying to calm the growing rioters as mobs of vast size are organizing under the lead of anarchists and socialists and threaten to plunder and despoil the houses of the rich who have wronged and oppressed them for so many years. The Fifth Avenue Hotel will be the first to feel any fury of the mob. The Fifth Avenue Hotel is now where Trump Tower stands, and those anarchists and socialists are present-day enemies of Donald Trump.
Right.
Wow.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Does that, if that doesn't give you the shivers, nothing will.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I just, to me, I just feel like this is kind of a bad thing to do.
Well, I think it's a violation. I mean, any space-time violation, I think that's a violation of, because the Buddhists believe, for example, that we're here to work out our, salvation in fear and trembling, and they believe in reincarnation. And then you have Hindus who also believe the same thing. A lot of Christians do not. Some Christians do. And so regardless of how you feel about that, some believe that the physical plane that we're used to right now was created so that mankind could work out their salvation with fear and trembling, be able to help each other do whatever they needed to, that it's all part of the grand design. And messing around with that is a violation of what would be considered the Holy Spirit. you know.
Right.
You know, I found an advertisement here from O'Reilly Auto Parts, the flux capacitor. So time travel must be real. There you go.
How much is it? How much
is it? Where do you get it?
And can it fit in my Avalon?
No, there's no
Avalon go 88 miles per hour.
Yeah, that's right. No, it can't. That's the problem.
Well, if it coax it right, and if you get your lights off of it,
you're running downhill. You take the brakes off.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, I think this is interesting because, you know, we've got that. Another one is The Time Traveler's Wife, that book that was written, which was, I don't know if any of you read that, but that was fascinating. But that time traveler in that one, each time he'd make a jump, he gets more and more sick. And then there was one that, I think it was Clancy. He wrote one on time travel, and they went back to the Middle Ages. Maybe it wasn't Clancy. Jurassic Park. Who did Jurassic Park?
Spielberg?
No, the original book.
Oh,
that was who was that? Michael Crichton. He did one. He did a book. I enjoy a lot of Michael Crichton's work. And he did one on time travel where a college had figured out time travel, and they went back to the Middle Ages and the problems that it caused, and they weren't able to bring the team back. And, you know, I sit there and I see some of the stuff that they're doing, and I just don't see that it's a good thing. I think it's something that shouldn't be done.
Wow. Well, I happen to agree with you. Yeah, because you're messing with stuff you shouldn't mess with.
Right. And just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. Yes.
Well, there's also some. Did you ever? Boy, this is going to segue into something entirely different. But did you ever read anything that was left by? And I got to think of the guy's name who actually worked at Area 51, and he reverse engineered. He was the first one to go in there to try to identify the propulsion systems on
Philip Corso.
No.
Okay.
God, wait a minute. He worked at Area 51. He went over there, and his job was to try to make some sense out of their engineering, you know, related to propulsion. And so he went, Lassiter. I think his last name was Lassiter. Is it Lassiter? We'll find out. Anyway, so the deal was that basically he went and checked it out, and found out that what they did was that they utilized a non-naturally occurring element that was not found on the Earth, naturally occurring, which had an extremely high atomic number. And apparently,
I know that element.
And apparently what they did was they used that element within the center of this craft to generate a magnetic field that actually bent space and time. So that the way that the alien propulsion system worked, the way it made it look like that they could hover, they could do whatever it was that they wanted to, was actually a bending of the space-time. So if they were going to cover huge amounts of distances, they didn't have to fly the distances. This thing would generate such an intense magnetic field surrounding it that it would actually pull the two components together so that your point A and your point B were right next to each other, and then standard propulsion would just move them over. So that they actually bent space-time to travel.
Right.
And there we go with the magnets again.
Yeah, exactly. And so then if you look at some of the, you know, evidence of people being abducted, you know, going back to the Betty and Barney story and all the other kind of stuff going on with that.
Right.
They talked about the magnets. They talked about magnetic, anomalies that would occur, weird things, burns on the ground, all sorts of other stuff. And they couldn't understand where it really didn't look like it was fire, but it was some kind of a strange magnetic anomaly. and it would explain how those ships would move straight up real fast and then take a 90-degree turn and move the other way. And, it was all in the way that they manipulated these fields, these energy fields, so that they could bend to space-time. And so I think that's screwing around with it. Let me see if I can figure this out, who that was. Oh, okay. I'm checking the extensive Secret Squirrels research library, aka the internet. I'll see what I can.
Oh, and we've got a vast and wonderful library.
Oh, totally. Anything and everything you wanted to know, even stuff you didn't want to know, is there too. And even stuff that shouldn't be there is there as well. We have everything at our fingertips. This might take me a while, so carry on while I'm trying to find this.
Well, when you talk about things that are stationary and then fly off, I think about a hummingbird. I don't know why, but I watch them and the way they fly is just really.
Oh, it's incredible.
It is.
It wasn't Lassiter. I'm sorry, excuse me. It wasn't Lassiter. It was Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar.
Oh, I've heard that name.
Yeah, Bob Lazar was the guy who explained the propulsion system on the Alien Air.
Okay, with that, it's time for us to sign out, everybody.
What? Oh, come on. We're just getting going.
Yeah, I know it's fun. We had our hour of fun. It was nonsensical.
It was fun.
And, maybe time travel's real. You got any proof otherwise?
Any proof otherwise?
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe that was John Teeter, the guy in that picture that we saw,
Yeah.
Maybe Teeter wrote that book. It was really Teeter who wrote it.
Okay. Well, this was episode 13. Supposed to be special, time travel. Not really special. It was totally ad-lib. But, I'm sure you couldn't tell.
Oh, the element is element 115. Sorry.
Thank you. You found it.
What's that?
I did.
Okay.
Now, what's really wild about this is mainstream now, almost. And back in the 80s, oh my God, this was just.
Oh, you were crazy for even talking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Muscovium.
Hey, we're going to carry on, Brain. We're not even going to, you can end this whatever you want. We'll just keep carrying on.
Actually, kind of.
Yeah, don't let us bother you, Brain.
Bye.